Oh, from New York, New York, you are listening to Extra Time from the AT&T 5G Virtual Studios. I am Andrew Wiebe with my partners in soccer, David Goss, Matt Doyle. Coming up on today's jam-packed show, we're getting you ready for 2022, all the news you might have missed or didn't at all over the holiday break. Tom Bogert's going to join us in a bit to talk Ricardo Pepi to Augsburg, Daryl Dike to West Brom, James Sands to Rangers, and much more. Lorenzo Insigne to Toronto for how much money? It's not official, but Fabrizio Romano says it's done. It looks pretty done. We'll talk about the reported salary and the expected impact in the six. New managers, Cherundolo, Nagamura, Bradley Carnell in St. Louis. New Real Salt Lake ownership group, headlined by David Blitzer and Ryan Smith. They say they're going to take that club to the next level. We got free agent intrigue, Rusnak to Seattle or LA, or neither. Blanco not returning to the Timbers. Sean Davis to Nashville. Every move fit to discuss, and the best your mail in the mailbag. Oh, deep breath, and that's not even mentioning the SuperDraft that goes down on Tuesday. 2:30 p.m. Eastern is when the coverage starts on MLSsoccer.com, MLS app, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. The draft starts at 3 p.m. Eastern. It is presented by Adidas. We will have Michael Lahoud for a deep dive. We'll release that podcast on Monday. Oh, welcome back, guys. Did anything happen while we were gone? It seemed really calm, really quiet. Like nothing was happening.
I think
very chill.
It's a sign of growth that this is like the most wild MLS offseason that we've ever had, right? Like in years past, the Daryl Dike news would have been by far the biggest news of any MLS offseason. And like it wasn't even the biggest news that day. Like,
it just feels like it just felt like I faded away. It's like, oh yeah, DK to West Brom, 10 mil. It's all makes sense.
Last year, DK being on loan was the biggest story for 5 months, and now he gets sold, and we're like, yeah, for sure. Obviously, next story, please continue.
Yeah, Daryl DK podcast. We're gonna put you down the rundown about halfway down, Daryl. Don't worry about it. We had to beg to be back, by the way. The powers that be wanted to keep us from you for even longer. We would not allow it. But one big question to start us off. Biggest MLS nuptial news of this little holiday break. We got Josie Altidore married to Sloane Stevens. 2 stars coming together on New Year's Day. David Goss engaged on Christmas Eve. Or producing Anders finally officially married, tied the knot, although it felt like he was already tied down before that. What do you think, Doyle? What's your take here? What's the biggest one?
I mean, Anders and Aaron are my cat sitters. So like that is the big one for me. You know,
a lifetime.
Above and beyond anything else. Absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. Dave, congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Did you propose to? Because we all know who wears the pants in that relationship. So did you propose to her, or did she propose to you?
I proposed, but it was after I bought the ring. It was like 2 months of. I could just buy my own ring if you want me to, and like, or I could just propose to you. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna do it. And she's like, no, it's fine. It's not a big deal. And I'm like, just wait.
I got a plan. I promise you, I got a plan. I'm trying to think of transfer.
With Josie the whole time. Obviously, because we were trying to coordinate, make like a dual thing. Tom Barlow got engaged on the same night as me, too.
Whoa.
So shout out to big news. Tom Barlow, Red Bull 2 legend.
You and Josie in the kitchen just trying to cook up something nice for everybody out here, in particular Sloan and Megan. Well, big congratulations to you. It felt like a transfer rumor that just stretched window to window, and we're like, hey, you got to lock this thing down, man.
Wow.
Lock it down. Make the signing. Put the money on the table. Let's see this thing happen. But we're super happy. It's been a great offseason for all of us here at Extra Time. We hope for you.
Just end up at Boa Vista. That's all.
Yikes. Woo! Feels good to be back, folks. And boy, it is not going to slow down. I teased it off the top. We got a lot to talk about, but I just want to give you some perspective as we go through all this news about what's to come for you, us, everybody in North American soccer. The SuperDraft is in 4 days. Again, that's on Tuesday, January 11th. It's the SuperDraft, of course, 2022 presented by Adidas. Again, 2:30 p.m. Eastern coverage starts, MLSsoccer.com, the MLS app, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. We're going to have people all over the country. Dave, I think you're going to be in Durham, North Carolina?
Yeah, I'm going to Duke. I've never been to Raleigh or Durham. So besides the ramen shop that Sam Stejskal published his great Kyle Beckerman piece from the bathroom of, I have no sights to see. So let me know if you have any recs. But I'm excited. I'm going to be with 3 players there. Obviously, 1 Generation Adidas player, and then hopefully 3 first-round draft picks.
Yeah, the 8th-generation Adidas players are out. And again, we're going to deep dive that with Mike LaHood. We'll release that first thing on Monday. But you can watch full coverage. I mean, you're going to be, in Durham? We've got Katie Witham, I want to say, in Charlotte. I think Julian Sakovitz is in Cincinnati. Useni Buddha is watching with Sealy Goodwin. And then we have Mike LaHood, Devin Kerr, myself on desk in Florida. We've got insight from Doyle coming. We'll be bouncing around the entire league. We've got cameras on a ton of different SuperDraft picks. It's going to be a really, really fun Tuesday. And that, to me, is sort of the kickoff for the MLS season. That's when it all feels real. Training camp is coming after that, so tune in with us. Again, training camp start next week because CCL starts in 39 days. February 15th is the first competitive game. Opening day is in 50 days, but between that, the U.S. national team are gathering for a camp because they've got match days 9 through 11 of the octagonal in 20 days on January 27th. The Open Cup starts, MLS entry starts at least, on April 19th. The All-Star Game's August 10th. Canadian Championship is sometime August to November. Leagues Cup is August and September sometime. Campeones Cup, I think, is probably late September based on the past. Decision Day is October 9th. MLS Cup is November 10th. World Cup starts in Qatar, November 21st. So that is 2022 for you. What is one thing before we hit the news that you're excited for in 2022? Can be big, can be small, can be hipster, can be very mainstream, Doyle. What do you think?
I'm looking forward to hopefully a year that has a little more rhythm than the past 2 years. And for obvious reasons, the last 2 years have been unusual. And this year is going to be a little bit unusual because it is a World Cup year, and the placement of the World Cup is November as opposed to the summer. So it's a little bit different, but it just feels like we're going into preseason now knowing the schedule. We haven't done that for the last 2 years, basically. And so that is going to, I think it's just going to make the regular season much more enjoyable.
It's so normal, Dave, that they added a new league.
Doyle's already scheduling his bedtime for June 8th. That's what he's excited about. He knows exactly where he'll be when. A creature of comfort.
100%.
There's a new league, MLS Next Pro, coming in. Obviously, I'm very... I focus a lot on youth development in this country, and I was down at MLS Next last year, which was obviously a youth competition. And I talked to a few clubs, and I got to watch a few clubs that the U19 teams, the U18 teams that I watched are going to be their MLS Next Pro team. And so I'm just excited to see these groups play at that level, to see how this league develops. But one of the big ones is Chicago Fire. They ran their U19 team as a pro-style environment, and they're going to probably elevate most, if not all, of that team to MLS Next Pro. So it's going to be fun to watch how it goes down. And I think for a lot of people who are constantly asking us, who's next, where, who do you expect, whatever, you're going to get a platform now to start to get to know all those names.
And we'll get more details on that in the weeks to come, because I know I still have a lot of questions about MLS Next Pro. I'm going to go with return to the Open Cup. It has been too long. It is one of the best competitions on the calendar. I think one of the best competitions in the world. We know it's one of the oldest. It's been gone. It's been a hole. It's been something that we've enjoyed so much in the past. When I think of the Open Cup, I think of the Florida Soccer Soldiers, and I think of you and Bobby Dave calling as the Orlando fans migrate to the PK side. I just remember the wacky, the wild, the upsets, the underdogs, all these incredible special stories that go deeper than the first division, so to speak, which is what we spend so much time talking about. I can't wait for that. And then the other one, and we'll talk more to Michael LaHood about this, Kai Kamara in Sierra Leone and AFCON. It's just such an incredible story that has these deep MLS ties to Kai, and this might be sort of his last hurrah. I mean, he might run the country after this thing, like the way that he gets love in Sierra Leone for what they've done recently. And if they can do it in AFCON after a long absence, it's going to be awesome. So I'm looking forward to all that, and then of course all the normal stuff. And now the news.
Wait, can I get
We could do a 3-hour podcast, but maybe we keep some of these short. Probably not the first one. What do you think? You agree. You all agree. Lorenzo Insigne to Toronto FC. It's not done, as I said at the top, at least not in press release form. But The Athletic is reporting, Fabrizio Romano is reporting. It feels like enough sort of headway is there that we're just waiting for that official announcement. The Athletic is saying it's a 4-year deal through 26, $15 million roughly per year. That's before tax, and I know that'd been a big part of the conversation around this signing, is just how much money is this going to be for Lorenzo Insigne. $8.5 million if you're talking after tax there. That would make him the highest paid player in MLS history if those are indeed the numbers. Again, I'm not sure at this point. This is huge. This is a Euro winner. This is a Napoli captain and star. This is a Serie A, shining light. This is a world-class player. So, Doyle, I know that we've all sort of been through the cycles at this point with this rumor of like, oh my God, is this real? Oh my God, it is real. Oh my, is that number real? Like, it is real-ish. Okay, it's going to happen. Where is your head at with Lorenzo Insigne to Toronto FC?
It's a tough one to pin down because he's still in his prime, but he's at the very tail end of it, right? Like he'll be 31 by the time he comes over. That is younger than guys with his profile have ever come over before, right? Like he has a bigger profile player than Giovinco. He's a bigger profile player than Carlos Vela was. He's not quite the same level as a David Villa or obviously like a Thierry Henry, but he's not super far off from those guys. Like he's a starter for Italy who just won the Euros, and he's in his prime. So it's like, it does feel kind of like a different type of signing. And that's just like the sort of off-field perception stuff. As for the on-field, like he should be really successful. He's a good player. He's scored a lot of goals, created a lot of chances over the past 10 years in Serie A. And he's been, very consistent with it up until, really this year. He's kind of tailed off after having a monster season last year, but he also played 1 million minutes last year. So it checks a lot of boxes that we've seen before, and it checks a couple that we haven't. And all of this is happening where he's going to come play for Bob Bradley, who we've seen over the past 4 years. Playing for Bob means you're going to get chances. If you're a winger, it means you're not just going to get chances. You're going to have the ball at your feet a ton. And it feels like if this can go in the same direction that like those first two Vela years went, in terms of redefining almost what is capable, like what is possible from an individual in MLS. At the same time, we've seen big money moves not pan out as well, and it's kind of the glory of this league. Like you're never really quite sure until it happens.
What do you think of the numbers, Dave? And what do you think we should realistically expect from Lorenzo Insigne? I have said, and I believe that you should expect Robbie Keane-esque impact. I know that's not a name you threw in there, Doyle, but you should expect him to be an MVP candidate perennially during this contract. I think if he's not expecting himself to be that, then what's he doing it? Why is he doing it for? Obviously the money is big, but as a competitor as well, that's what he should expect. But can then Toronto also bridge that gap to the trophies? Because it's not that, maybe they needed to rebuild, but they certainly needed to rebuild parts of their squad. Defensive side maybe being the biggest side of that. Like this balance between the money, people saying, how could they pay him this much money, and the expectations. How does he bridge that? How do you think about that?
Well, I think I start with on the money. One, it's not my money, right? So I don't really care. And two, the way MLS structure is Toronto needs center backs. None of the money that went into signing Lorenzo Insigne can go to getting a center back. That's not how the league salary cap structure works. So it doesn't really matter the amount you spend above the DP level on a player of this quality and then say, well, but they need center backs. That's not how it works. This isn't Aston Villa. It's not just like, oh, let's go sign players and then this is our transfer kitty. So it doesn't really affect that. Now, I agree with what Doyle said when you put in if you put in a graph, quality and age and where they're at and what they've done, this is one of the great signings in MLS history. And he is a world-class player. And so the money you need to sign that player is probably around where Toronto ended up. I don't think they overpaid, and I think he's going to come in and score a ton of goals. I believe that this league is past one player being able to win for a team. They could win games for you, but you're not making the playoffs even on the back of one player. No team in this league does that. And so when you talk about Vela, You talk about an LAFC team that had Atuesta and Mark Anthony Kaye, who have now been sold for millions of dollars or traded for millions in allocation, and Eddie Segura and Diego Rossi, who's at Fenerbahce. Like, every one of these great players we talk about were on great teams. I don't know that Toronto's a great team as of right now, but if you're going to go out and sign a big-name player, I think Insigne fits all of the boxes that you want, and I think he'll score a ton of goals in this league.
What's your over-under? Like, if you had to set an over-under right now,
For
very
goals,
prematurely.
assists combined,
Yeah, goals, assists combined, and let's just say full season extrapolated. Because he gets here in the summer. I don't think we mentioned that explicitly. But, like, what is a good single season in Toronto under Bob with these numbers for Insigne?
I think if you're extrapolating to full season, I think it's fair to say 30 goals between goals and assists combined. So 15 and 15, however that breaks down. I think that's fair. Now, they need a center forward for him to set up sometimes at some point on this team. But I think it's fair to say if he comes in June, you want to see him get double digits in goals and assists if he plays from that point on.
By the way, some other news with Toronto FC here that is important as we talk about what kind of team's going to be around him. Richie Larea is gone. He went to Nottingham Forest. That's, again, I haven't seen a release on that one, but all the smoke, all the fire, it looks like he took his chance and went to the championship. They did sign Shane O'Neill in free agency. I thought that was a really good free agency signing. They're linked to a bunch of number 9s, a lot in Serie A, including Andre Belotti. Ayo Akinola's out of contract, so that's a TBD. Josie Altidore is married, but he might be gone. Jefferson Soteldo reportedly sort of on the block. Hey, do you want to go back to Palmeiras? Do you want to go back to Brazil? That would work pretty well for us. From Toronto FC's perspective. Doyle, what's the rest of this offseason for them? What is year one for Bob in your mind right now?
Yeah, I mean, clearing the decks is part of it. Soteldo is a talent, but he didn't fit. He wasn't fit. He seems to want to go back to South America, finding a happy landing spot for that, finding a number that works for both Toronto and Josie, because Josie apparently has 2 years left on his contract and quite a bit of money. So, that is tough to work out. And then if those two spots open up, then Toronto has a big decision to make, because between Insigne and Pozuelo, they have two DPs who are true DPs. And that is good, but it also means with your third DP, if you want to have all three of those U22 initiative slots, then you need to have someone who is not like an Insigne or Pozuelo level type of guy. So I think that's got to be the first thing on the agenda. But like, Ayo Akinola's status has to be near the top of it. Ayo's got like 14 goals and 3 assists in 2,000 minutes, and he has looked the part every time he was on the field in 2020 and 21. I think he's like a Daryl Dike, Ricardo Pepi type of level, type of talent. Now, obviously, he has had to deal with injuries that those guys haven't had to deal with, but like Ayo, like, if you can get him back and get him healthy, you don't have to go out and buy a DP number 9. You produced a guy who puts up DP numbers from your academy. That's why academies exist. So, like, that's obvious. Like, the top line is figuring out Soteldo and Josie, but the second line for me is figuring out what Ayo's status is, and then the rest of it is like kind of fill in the blanks and make sure that you get some depth on the back line. You know what your central midfield rotation is going to be. I have questions about their goalkeeping. I don't know if they do, but like neither Bono nor Westberg were at all good last year. So like there's going to be a lot of boxes to check, but those first two are pretty easy to sort of identify for me.
One last point for me on the Insigne signing is this has been rumored for a year now. So the conversations have been ongoing, and I think we can all be adults and say Bob Bradley left LAFC and took over at Toronto FC, 24 hours later? I think we all know those conversations maybe happened before that time period, but it's hard to look at it and say this is a Bob Bradley signing, right? And he's taking this team over. This is his group, but these conversations clearly started well before he got involved. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Bob Bradley sees this roster, how he rebuilds it, while also dealing with, here is your biggest signing of the offseason, and here is the centerpiece of your team, and maybe it wasn't the guy that you specifically picked or the needs that you specifically identified. I think that's going to be interesting to see how they work that together.
If I was Bob, I would have just been sending 2019 Carlos Vela clips to Insigne, being like, "Think you can do this? I think you can do better than this. Like, can you do better? Let's see if you can do better."
Because he already did the Messi thing, so he needs a new.
Yeah, that's true. What Barcelona player is going to get the comp here? That's a big question for the mailbag. 401-206-0MLS. Extra time at MLSsoccer.com. All right, let us know your thoughts on Lorenzo Insigne, and now the man, the myth, the mustache. It's gone. Tom Bogert, Tommy Scoops. What happened, man? We're here to talk transfers with you, and you're naked. You're on the show just completely butt naked.
Yeah.
In the face.
What I will say is that, theater of the mind for whoever's listening on a podcast and not watching this on YouTube, just pretend the mustache is still here. But hey, it's off season for me too. You gotta change it up.
Clear,
the artist
everyone
seduction.
listening on
You gotta make people want it more. So the mustache is getting a little hiatus from the squad right now.
The MLS art of seduction.
It didn't really come across that way, so I just want to set
right. I've said of the face, naked, just on the face side of things. Yeah, just making sure, hey, good clarification. Good clarification. All right, we're talking transfers. That's what we do with Tom. Ricardo Pepi, done. Augsburg, 20 mil. Daryl Dike, done. West Brom, had to be a B team. The Baggies, baby. Championship TID, $9.5 million. Tejan Buchanan, of course, had been done. That's $7 million. Gianluca Busio was done earlier, too. Venezia, $6.6 million. That's just like in the last 6 months, Tom, and there are more to come. James Sands is on loan to Rangers. Let's start with Pepi. What do you know about this transfer? How did it come together? Why Augsburg?
Yeah, it's been obviously in the works for a long time, as everybody's been seeing the reports for a long time. Augsburg has always been very interested in him. Even people involved in the deal weren't entirely sure that they were going to have enough money to meet this asking price, so we haven't heard a ton about them other than in the beginning. Like, they bought Przemysław Frankowski from Chicago for, I think, $3 million. They had a bid rejected for Tejan Buchanan for about $3.5 million, and then they tapped out after that. They were like, all right, that's too much for us. So it was kind of surprising to see that they were even in the Ricardo Pepi sweepstakes. His camp met with everybody. Like, I don't want to do hyperbole, but everybody had him on their radar. It was just about who was going to pay this.
Say the names. Give us the names.
Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, English clubs like Wolves, Southampton, Liverpool, Fiorentina, AC Milan a while ago. There was a bunch of Italian teams this time last year who wanted him. Just going league by league, team by team. These were all teams that were interested. Dortmund, Ajax, West Ham. Like, I'm forgetting some of the ones that were kind of linked earlier. But, the Final Four came down to Augsburg, who obviously won out. Wolves, Wolfsburg, and another Premier League team that I haven't been able to get confirmed yet. But yeah, so there were huge teams involved that were interested in him, but none that I guess wanted to pay what Dallas wanted right now. / like the fit might not have been right. Like, I forget, somebody had this take that I'm definitely stealing, and I apologize for who I forget I'm taking it from. But one of the ideas is that if he went to a Bayern Munich, if he went to a Dortmund, maybe he would have been loaned to a team like Augsburg in a few months. So it's kind of skipping a step, and this could be a good fit in the sense that he's going to play. Like, he's pretty much doubled the record transfer. They desperately need goals, and they desperately need points, and they put their Bundesliga relegation fight on the line by investing in Ricardo Pepi, which should tell you how much that not only do they like him, and how much they think that he's ready right now.
By the way, the one of the owners of Augsburg is the new owner of Real Salt Lake, David Blitzer. So
maybe
there are
that's where
some
the money
connections
came from.
there. Doyle, you had said, hey, stay with FC Dallas through this World Cup. I want to see you play. He is going to play, it seems, in a much different environment with much different stakes, given where Augsburg are in the middle of their season right now, which is just above the line, right?
I said stay with FC Dallas unless you get the right move. I said, he actually said it. I think Doug McIntyre had a nice column on it, doing sort of a TikTok of the move, and Pepi said, he's seen what's happened to guys like Brian Reynolds. He's seen what's happened to Josh Sargent, where he's made a move just for the sake of making a move, and is now playing a different position and kind of falling out of the national team camp or picture. And Pepi said, like, I needed to go to a place where I would play center forward. And I don't think he would have played that. I don't think he would have gotten into the lineup and played for Wolfsburg, let alone Bayern Munich or Borussia Dortmund or certainly Real Madrid. It would have been best case scenario. It would have been like, okay, you immediately get a loan to a club like Augsburg. So to steal from Tom, who just stole from someone who we can't identify.
It might have been you, honestly.
It could have been. It sounds
so convenient. I'm going to start doing that. Like, highway robbery on somebody, but you can't identify the victims. So,
based upon Augsburg's needs and the spend, it seems like the right move. It seems like they really need a number 9 and a goal scorer, and he is that. Now, they also need some better chance creation. Ricardo Pepi has had some experience playing in attacks that need better chance creation, both for club and country. So this won't be entirely foreign to him. But like, Pepi is a guy who needs service. I think that in the long run, this is a type of move that has a pretty high chance of working out. I think in the short run, we might see a barren couple of months because they're not a good team. They're a relegation fodder team, and those teams, he's not going to be getting a lot of tap-ins from 6 yards out. I would rather have seen him end up at like a PSV or an AZ or something like that. Big club in a smaller league rather than small club in a big league. That said, $20 million, he's going to start in the Bundesliga. I think it checks enough boxes to be pretty jacked about this move.
I don't know how you say no to $20 million and a Bundesliga move at 18. And one thing that I think, Dave, you and I, and certainly you longer than I, have seen with Pepi is there is a composure, there's a trust, there's a belief, there's sort of a pathway that he sees for himself or is sort of cobbling together as he goes. And he just doesn't seem to waver on it. And I have been wowed every time interacting with him, seeing him in these big situations that have just piled up on him, the way that he has handled them and thrived. I think there's real bravery in this move. Like, you're right, he could have just chosen the big name, Doyle. He could have just been like, hell yeah, Bayern Munich, I'm going to go out on loan. Like, I'm going to take a little bit of the Chris Richards path. Like, it might be a little easier. I might make some more money. The fee is still probably going to be huge. I get the Bayern, tag on me as an 18-year-old player. That's awesome. But, like, he chose a mid-sized city in a relegation battle that absolutely needs him. Like, I just think about what Ricardo Pepi must be thinking. Like, the story that he must be seeing or believing that he can write here. Like, this dude could be a savior of an entire European city. You know what I mean? Like, he could come in and save the season of this club. He could save their first division status. He could basically be a legend at 18. And not only is that exciting, but it's also a ton of pressure. So for him to embrace that, and it certainly seems that he is, I mean, I'm just excited to watch it from a story point of view, to see how he handles it, to see how Augsburg uses him, to see what the end result is. And look, if it doesn't work out, maybe he's in the 2 Bundesliga for a year banging in goals and getting them promoted. Again, another incredible story. Or maybe he's just sold back up if he succeeds and they can't do it collectively. But that belief in himself is so powerful. And I just feel every step he's taken, he's just looked comfortable and he's produced. Maybe it doesn't continue, but I got to think that Ricardo Pepi, Dave, is like, he believes in himself. If you don't believe in yourself, you don't make this move. You take an easier route.
You're writing a story for him, which some would also call a narrative.
I am.
You're in a safe space right now.
I've got it's like that. It's like the leather bound book, cursive on the first page. We just got to get the lead right.
It blows my mind, but
yeah, I know.
Listen, Pepi has. You talk about scalability, right? Every time he has moved up a level, whether it's from youth to pro, up the youth ranks, or through the pro ranks, he has hit the ground running. Now, there has been a very structured pathway for him, one that he's comfortable in Dallas that entire time, right? It's been the same personalities around him, in obviously the same city, not home, but close to home. And this is the first unknown for him that he's going to experience. Now, I think the way he landed with the national team bodes well, of that was a different group, that was a different coaching staff, a different style, and he was able to obviously be incredible fairly immediately. And so that gives me confidence that he can do it at this level. But yeah, anytime you're around this guy, from since he was, a U15 player on for me, that you've been around him, you've understood that he has that confidence in himself and he has belief in the way that your career goes. I think a lot of players would have taken the Munich or Dortmund move because that's the only way they see their career path. And I think Pepi's had the experience, and credit to FC Dallas as well, of teaching their young players the stages of a career. And obviously we talk about Luchi Gonzalez a ton, right? A guy who was a premier college soccer player and then pretty much washed out pretty quickly in MLS. I don't know if that's the term he'd use, and then went to USL and those experiences. And you see this with a lot of the coaching now, where it's not always Landon Donovan that's the coach for these youth teams, but it's players who have been through the ups and downs of a pro career, teaching these players from a young age that it's not going to be one straight shot to the top, and you're not going to potentially play for Man U tomorrow, but that there's value in all those moves up and down. And I think that's where you see a guy like Pepi being able to make this decision. Can I ask, has any MLS signing ever been one of a signing like this where a team said, we need to win tomorrow, and the big signing we are making is a player out of MLS? Miguel Almiron might go in that convo. The Landon Donovan loans. I'm trying to think of other ones where it was like, we need you to win for us tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, I think Miguel Almiron is the one. And just one more
the
kind
DK,
of on,
the DK loan last year might have been.
Yeah,
yeah. And
Yeah,
like
but I don't know if
DK right now is too.
Then
So
Arias too.
yeah.
But even still, those felt like more, hey, help us get up, not save us. And that is a different, there's a different narrative, Dave, when it comes to that as well. $20 million, though. I mean, we are glossing over $20 million for an American MLS homegrown striker. $20 million. Tom, that feels watershed. What are the people you talk to saying about that number?
Yeah, it's huge. And honestly, for when I started asking about, like, obviously Dallas knew that this kid has been special for a long time. And when he really was breaking through at the beginning of middle of this season, I had heard the $20 million valuation. Like, hey, we want this kid to be $20 million. We want $20 million. We want $20 million. I was like, all right, like, maybe you'll accept 15 though. Maybe this is just blustering. But they were pretty steadfast on, like, we want 20 million. Think that this kid's special. We don't want to kind of shortchange ourselves. So, and in the end they got it. So good for them. It was obviously difficult and it was easier at the same time with all of the interest that they were able to kind of play off each other. Or, if one team said no, it wasn't. It was like, okay, we have 15 other teams we can call. But kind of one more thing that I thought was interesting, like Doyle, you talked about it a little bit, like Dallas did want to keep him this year. And not just because of the first team and his production, but because they did think that his value was going to go up with the World Cup. But when these offers were coming in and mid-December is when things got really, really serious, when the tone started to change from, we're going to keep him, we're not going to sell him unless a crazy offer comes in. A big offer came in. And that's when this kind of got advanced. That's when the front four of, Wolfsburg, Augsburg, and the two Premier League clubs kind of separated themselves. And when that big offer came in and talks started to get advanced, Ricardo Pepi's father said to the FC Dallas front office, our family is a family of opportunity. This is an opportunity that you cannot guarantee will still be here in 6 months, and we want to take this opportunity. And to Dallas's credit, obviously it was easy when you get that kind of money to say yes, but to Dallas's credit, they did say yes and they did let him go rather than creating what would have been a messy situation, I imagine, if they kind of really tried to hold on and not even talk and not accept any of these offers.
Let's go Papa Pepi. Just saying, look, this is what's up. This is what the family needs. This is how it needs to go, and that's how it did go. Now, look, $20 million for Ricardo, $8.5 million for Brian Reynolds, who, by the way, looks like he's about to go on loan, probably to Anderlecht or otherwise, who just collect MLS outside backs. Tanner Tessman for about $4 million to Serie A, and then Reggie Cannon for whatever it is that Boa Vista can eventually be milked of. That's over $30 million in transfer fees for FC Dallas. There is a lot of talk about what they do next and how they handle this. I mean, first of all, congratulations to FC Dallas as a club, as an academy, as a soccer entity for producing players of this quality and then moving them on. You have to start with that. But there is a lot of talk now about what happens next. One of the things that's happened next is that Jesus Ferreira has signed a DP deal, reportedly for around $2 million a year. So FC Dallas is, I think you tweeted, Doyle, not to steal it from you, that either Dallas is saying either we're going to make your dreams come true in Europe and you're going to be rich, or you're going to be rich right here if you're good enough.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. But there's still a missing part that we talk about on this show all the time, which is, getting the other DP signings right, getting Tam right, building a team that can win MLS Cup. What now? Should the expectations on FC Dallas be raised?
Can I say before we get there?
Yeah, sure.
Andrea Zanota, I think, obviously was brought in to help create this selling market, which has been a huge success as you rattled off those numbers. But remember the Reggie Cannon deal of huge raise, but we'll sell you. Like, we're almost forcing ourselves to sell you. And I think the way Dallas has structured these contracts, and I think Jesus Ferreira should be included in that list of, like, they produce the DP homegrown. No one else is really doing that. And obviously if Paxton Pomykal was healthy, there could be other players. Dante Seeley's on loan at PSV. There's more to this. Chris Richards, Justin Che, whatever it is.
Justin Che, yeah.
One of the things that other teams should take from Dallas is not just the commitment to young players, and it's not just how they sold, but it is the contracts that you give those players and you present to them to say that we can be in this together, and you're showing them they have value by literally giving them value. And so MLS teams are starting, I think, to get the best young players to sign homegrown deals rather than just try and join an academy in Europe and leave immediately. But that next step now is that second contract. And Doyle talked about Ayo Akinola in the last segment. Toronto's tried to do that, but I think for overall, that's one of the things that MLS clubs need to see that Dallas was able to be successful with.
By the way, I just want to throw out these other names. Carlos Guerrezo, Tiago Santos, Cobra, all those guys sold as well by Dallas, so it's not just a homegrown outgoing thing. By the way, Carlos Guerrezo at Augsburg, so joining a fellow FC Dallasite is Ricardo Pepi. So now what for Dallas, Doyle? Should we raise the expectations here? Should we say, look, Franco Jara free from Mexico and, and Ferreira is not enough at DP? Your results are not enough given what you produce out of your academy and the amount of money coming in. Like, what should we expect from Dallas?
So I think they need to go big on a number 9. Franco Jara was good down the stretch off the bench. Now, obviously, you want your number 9 to be better than just an off the bench guy, but it looks like that's all that FC Dallas have right now is a number 9, because after giving Jesus Ferreira a DP salary, it would be insane to use him out of position. We saw last year, he's a DP caliber player, the second half of last year anyway, he was playing as a second forward. Like, he is a shadow striker, and he could play a little bit on the wing. He could do a little bit of false nine stuff, but if you have a young player like this who you've developed to this level at this position, it would be kind of crazy to play him otherwise. And at the same time, when you have this kind of influx of cash, it would be kind of crazy to have season 3 of trusting your goal scoring to Franco Jara. So I do think that they need to go out and get a DP center forward, and I think they need to get it right. And the nice thing, it should be said, the nice thing about signing Jesus Ferreira, he's a young DP, so he only hits the cap at $200,000. And that'll still be the case 2 years from now. And if one of your 3 DPs is a young DP, then you have access to all 3 of those U22 initiative slots. So they can go out and go as big as they want with, whatever funds that they have allocated towards filling this third DP slot, and still have those U22 initiative slots to spread around the roster wherever they want. So there are a lot of things that they can do with this. I think it's obvious the direction they need to go in. And the other thing that needs to be remembered here is that the issue with Dallas last year was not their attack. Like, it wasn't great, but the issue with Dallas was that their defense fell apart last season, especially when Matt Hedges got hurt. And then Jimmy Maurer was so good in 2020. He was mostly dinged up last year. So when he did play, he wasn't at that same level. And like the backup keepers were not good for FC Dallas. Now it looks like they're trying to address this. They're bringing in a Spanish keeper, I think on loan. Is it, Tom, for a year?
6 month loan, I believe, or something.
Yeah, so it might, like, maybe he's there to just be a backup. Maybe he's there to push Maurer for the starting job. So it looks like they've kind of identified some things. They gave Nkosi Tafari, I think, a nice contract because he was probably their best defender last year, and that is a good sign that they can recognize that they're getting more value out of the draft than on the international transfer market when it comes to defenders. But like, they have to fix that defense if they don't, it probably won't even matter what they do to fill Ricardo Pepi's shoes.
2 quotes, 1 question for you after, Tom. This is new FC Dallas manager Nico Estevez. Pepi transfer creates an opportunity for us to reinvest the proceeds from this transfer on players who can make an immediate impact on the field and help us compete at a high level. Technical Director Andre Zanota, this transfer fee allows us to be aggressive in both this transfer window as well as the summers. We are committed to building a championship roster and recognize we have several positions to fill. How active do you think FC Dallas will be?
I expect them to be active. I don't think that it's unfair to not give them the benefit of the doubt of the base. Just some context that I would add is that obviously the Boavista stuff, last I checked a couple months ago, they hadn't gotten any money. The Brian Reynolds, it was a loan at first because of the way it had to be structured for FIFA Fair Play. So that money didn't start coming in until the summer / this winter. Tanner Tessman, I believe, was something similar where the payment structure was not immediate. So they didn't necessarily just have the banks filled. Great argument could be easily made that the money's coming unless it's from Boavista. It's coming, so you should be able to put it out. But the idea that has been conveyed to me is that they have it now. Like they should be more active now and in the summer, but hopefully now. And I have heard that Zanota and the front office have been shopping around in South America, particularly Brazil. And I've heard that there are the expectation of a couple air quote big, whatever big means for this team and this club are kind of is what the idea. And maybe we'll have some news on that before preseason starts. But again, I don't think that they've earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to player acquisition. So let's see.
All right, let's see. Daryl Dike going to Best Brom. The Baggies, 9.5 mil. I just did it for the eye roll from you, Dave. That's the only reason I did that. Also, Orlando re-signed Mauricio Pereira. How do we feel about this one? What do you think? Back to the championship. Back to the same coach that he was with at Barnsley. Makes a lot of sense for Daryl. This is sort of the
proper football, mate.
Hey,
yep.
Keep it moving. Keep the ball moving in the right direction. Any big thoughts on Daryl Dike? Again, this was a Daryl Dike podcast for literally 6 months. Anybody? No.
I think it's reasonable to say if he can hit the ground the way he did last year, he has ground to make back up in the center forward battle for the U.S. men's national team. Right? A year ago, this exact show, we would have been like, Dike's the guy. Like, he's the answer. And then he didn't perform when he was with the national team over the course of the summer. He found his feet again with Orlando to close out the season and was really strong closing out the year. He played 2.5 straight years or 2 straight years of professional soccer for the first time in his life. It's all of that's fair. But in terms of his career, you talk about going into a place where you're comfortable, you know what the setup will be like, you've been successful already, and he needs to be successful this year to make a World Cup roster if the U.S. makes it, and then to find himself playing time. And then you look out and you say, well, if it's tough for Pepi at Augsburg, whether it's individually or just with the team, there might be room for him to grow into that role. And so I think for Dike, it makes a ton of sense now. And hopefully for him, it's as successful as it was last year.
West Brom 4th in the championship right now. So this is a promotion push as well for Daryl Dike. There is a possibility, I don't know if I would say very good, but certainly there is a possibility that he will be playing in the EPL next year. Walk us through the details as you know them, Tom. What's important to know about this transfer?
Well, I think my favorite part is that it's a permanent deal. The talks at the beginning and the expectation was going to be another loan with purchase option or loan with a purchase trigger if they got promoted. I love that his future's set no matter what happens. We don't have to be on Daryl Dike watch. We don't have to have Orlando City kind of in this 6-month limbo of, is he going to come back? Like, is he not? Like, how big do we go on a center forward right now? Or like having these thoughts and this kind of undecided future. I love that it's permanent, $9.5 million. They have the 20% sell-on clause, which is also very key. Look, it's not the fee that people were trying to push for the $20 million that ended up going for Ricardo Pepi. If there was an offer of $20 million last year, I think they would have accepted it. So I think that was more, silly season than anything true. So $9.5 million is a very good deal. 9.5 plus a 20% sell-on is a very good deal. Like, again, we need to change our expectations just because of the numbers that were being floated and again, some of the questionable reporting that kind of came out last year of this frenzy. This frenzy for Daryl Dike that, never kind of happened. And even he's like, I interviewed him. He was like, yeah, like, look, some things were true, but he's like, dude, like, most of it was not true. And like, he's like, it was fun to kind of, experience that for the first time and be able to just, keep on playing and like seeing that it really didn't affect me, but it was just kind of funny to read and see on Twitter.
Big offseason for Orlando, by the way, now. Nani, gone. Daryl Dike, gone. Chris Mueller, gone, going to Scotland. A lot of rumors around Orlando right now, not anything concrete just yet. Any final thoughts on Dike? I mean, we have so much news. Like, normally we would spend 40 minutes here. Anybody want to wrap this one up? Because we still got James Sands. We got a bunch of other questions for Tom. Then we have the entirety of the rest of the news, which includes 3 new head coaches, a new ownership group, and like 50 free agent signings. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nobody's got a final thought on Daryl Dike. 401-206-0MLS, extra time at MLSsoccer.com. Can I be a little bit disappointed in an 18-month loan for James Sands to Rangers, Tom? Just a tad?
Yeah. I mean, I understand that, but the people I've spoken to is that the idea is James Sands will be more valuable in 6 months after playing at Rangers or somewhere else in Europe before this deal was kind of settled than he is right now. They truly believe that clubs won't recognize or fully appreciate everything that he brings and gives to a team without having him in their building. I've heard kind of similar thoughts and a similar theory when it comes to Cole Bassett with the Colorado Rapids as well. So it is worth mentioning that. But I get it. I understand that like 18-month loan might sound, I guess, questionable for someone like James Sands. He's proven so much in MLS. He's proven so much for the national, not so much for the national. He's got U.S. national team experience. He's got 65 appearances with NYCFC. He's, as steady as they come. He's one of like the young players that you don't really worry about adaptability or anything. So it is a little odd, I guess, that it's a loan and such a long loan. But again, they think that this is going to pay off by way of value. And hey, worst case comes back and they'll be happy with that too.
Isn't part of it for a team buying him? What position are you buying him to play in?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
No, and there's I think there's quality to being adaptable, but it also then what's your high upside for a team? And so I think having him in a system where they see him, is he a center mid? Is he a third center back? You'd hope he doesn't play right back. But I think that's where you could understand a little bit of like people aren't sure maybe his upside at one position, and NYCFC then isn't getting the numbers that they expect for it.
So 2 things on that front. One, the people I've talked to, the expectation that he's going to play both defensive mid and center back. The Rangers play 4-3-3, so there isn't that snug fit as a center back and a back 3, but he could fundamentally do a lot of those, duties if they're playing 4-3-3 against, say, a bottom half Scottish team where they're going to have 70% possession. You don't need a third center back, and you don't need him in defensive midfield if that's you're kind of controlling the game like that. But also, what was I going to say? What was the second part of the question, Dave?
That would raise the value for NYCFC, and that no one sees him as a high level maybe yet, center mid specifically or center back.
Yeah, again, that's another good point that they'll see how he kind of adapts and they'll see how he goes. But again, the value, they think that James Sands is looked at as like A+ tactically, and like that's difficult for particularly European teams to look at an American kid from MLS like, okay, like A+ tactically over there, but we'll see when you come here and like real football and like we're a different level. So they like there is no good way to quantify that. You look at Brian Reynolds, for example. He was $8.5 million because his athletic metrics were off the charts. People, Roma, Juventus, AC Milan, they thought maybe he can turn into like he's got the best metrics since like Alphonso Davies coming out of MLS. Yeah, we'll throw $8.5 million to try this. James Sands doesn't jump off the screen with his metrics like that. He doesn't bang goals from 35 yards. Like there are a lot of more like nuanced like subtleties that are like truly value, and that's another reason behind the loan rather than say just accept the highest offer right now and then in 6 months his value goes way up.
This is your opportunity, Doyle, to just crush the Scottish Prem if you'd like, quote unquote, real football.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, what Tom said, like playing against a bottom half Scottish team, like playing against any team outside the top 2. Like Rangers is going to have 70% of the ball, and James Sands will be fine as a center back. That's that.
Chris Mueller's tearing down the wing for Hibs.
Well, I mean, like
Aberdeen and Christian Ramirez.
Christian Ramirez right now is second in the Golden Boot race. Yes, in Scotland, right? And I hope he wins it. Christian Ramirez is a good player, but like the difference in level between MLS and the SPL is just massive. And this move is to get into to get into the Champions League. Right now, Rangers is I think top of the table by a decent margin over Celtic and 5 or 6 points. And they are expected to continue that. They I think go. Do they make it into like?
No, they go directly into qualifying. They have to go through qualifying. That's why they're in the Europa League this year because they won the league last year and didn't qualify.
Right. So like, I mean, so it's not a guarantee that he'll be playing Champions League soccer, but it's pretty likely. And the other thing is, like, look, Rangers and Celtic are heavily scouted by Premier League teams and championship teams, and most American players who want to play in Europe, like, they'll happily go to Serie A or the Bundesliga or La Liga, that we really haven't cracked that nut yet, but they mostly want to play in the Premier League, and obviously Scotland is right next door. So I completely understand it from James Sand's point of view, especially because, like, Glenn Kamara might be sold. Like, I'm not an expert on Rangers' situation, but I've done enough reading over the past 48 hours or so to know that, like, the guy who's playing as number 6 is kind of a target for teams, elsewhere in Europe. And if that's the case, then that opens up some very obvious playing time for Sands at a level that he should absolutely crush it at.
If we're going narrative too, I mean, what a pleasure to play for Rangers in front of that crowd in the old firm. Whoa, man, that's real football. You know it is. Let's just finish it off with you, Tom, here. Tati, what could happen with him? You mentioned Cole Bassett. We've got a bunch of other rumors just flying around right now between, like, George Bello and Kai Wagner wants to go, and Soteldo and Jose Martinez and Buxa and Trusty and whoever else. Like, what's front of your mind right now?
Yeah, it really is wild. Like, we've knocked off, and you go back to Edward Atuesta, Buchanan deal that went official as January 1st, like, it's at like 5 or 8 like big signings, and then there's a couple more, like, Chris Mueller and Ignacio Aliseda. Like, there are a bunch of players that have already moved, and there's a bunch left to still come. Like you said, Tati Castellanos is got to be the guy to watch. Like, NYCFC turned down a $12.5 million bid from Palmeiras. They have reportedly are set like a $15 million price. I've talked to people there and asking, like, hey, does the Ricardo Pepi deal change the math for you guys? And it was like, not really. Like, even though they're both strikers, they both came from the same league. There's a different kind of play style. So, if one team is looking for Ricardo Pepi, they might be looking for a different thing for Tati Castellanos. So again, $15 million, that would have been the third highest transfer fee ever out of MLS before Pepe's deal or whatever it is. So, like, that's going to be a huge deal, and that we shouldn't overlook. Cole Bassett is another one. There's a bunch of teams interested in him. I've been told, like, more likely than not to leave, but obviously that all depends on the offers and the situation. Justin Che, we're looking at an overwhelming expectation is a loan. And I don't know if they'll have a purchase option or not, but the idea is that he's probably going to go. I don't know if it's going to be Bayern. Apparently their interest not has cooled, but they're not exactly at the front of that. We'll have to check in and see how that kind of develops over the month. But yeah, Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy is someone who impressed Liverpool a lot. I don't know if they're ready to make an offer or anything like that, but on his training stint, he very quickly got elevated to the U23s. They played him a little bit at right back from what I heard. Just looking on social media, he's sparked a very quick friendship with Harvey Elliott, Liverpool's 18 or 19-year-old wonder. So there are a lot of good signs there. And
that's real journalism right there.
That's some good Kalen Carr reporting right there, baby.
Like, these are just some of, like, I just rattled off like 5 or 6 names, and there's a bunch of, like, Austin Trusty that we talked about, or that you kind of noted. Like, there's just so, like, George Bello, like Walker Zimmerman, like all these people who, like, theoretically have interests or offers, and, like, that's like the 15th to 20th people that we've named here. Like think of, like, 4 or 5 years ago, if a guy, like, say, like, how much time did we put into Aaron Long? Like, and he ended up not going from the Red Bulls. They rejected a $5 million offer, but $5 million offer barely, like, bats our eyes, right? I kept saying 15 for Tati Castellanos, and then you guys even blinked. And it's not because I have bad internet today. This, like, I'm seeing you in real time. There's no delay here. Like, so it's crazy how quickly things have changed. Just, even 2-3 years ago.
Also, part of the reason we didn't blink is because you talk so fast. Let me ask you.
Keep up. Listen faster.
Let me ask you about Palmeiras, because most of these moves are for MLS players going to Europe, but, like, Palmeiras already bought Atuesta. They're in for Tati Castellanos. They are in apparently for Jefferson Soteldo for a loan. Like, what is the story there? Do they just see it as, like, a really fertile shopping ground for them?
Yeah, and I think it makes sense with the players that they've been linked with, that it's Jefferson Soteldo, somebody who has, best 11 experience in Copa Libertadores, somebody, Edward Atuesta, who was obviously developed in Colombia before he came to LAFC and took another level and came here. And Tati Castellanos came from South America. So I think that makes sense as a landing spot, and people have the tunnel vision for Europe and stuff, but Palmeiras is, like, that's a bigger club.
They're the biggest club in the Americas right now. They really are.
Back-to-back Copa Libertadores champions, like that'd be better than going to a mid-table team and insert random leagues in Europe. Like we need to just not look at it as binary as Europe or bust. Like they're like the narrative, I guess, as we would say, for these players to be going, like the idea is to go to Europe or whatever. We're going to develop, but there's nothing wrong with coming here from South America, playing here, having a good life, being treated well, playing well, developing, and then being sold to Palmeiras. Like there's nothing wrong with that, and that is another path that should be developing. And it is cool to watch them kind of appreciate the talents.
Stop. From the league's perspective, though, from MLS's perspective, the league is competing with clubs in the Americas to be sort of the premier pathway to Europe for kids here. And by here, I mean both North and South America. Do you think it is somewhat of a strategic step backwards if many of the best players in MLS are suddenly being sold to Palmeiras or Flamengo or any of the other Brazilian giants?
I don't think so, because those are destination clubs. It's like, I don't really think that Palmeiras.
They're not, though. They're not. Like, they're not destination
clubs. Do you think Atuesta
they're
is going to
steps
be
on the
sold
ladder? No, they're steps on the ladder. Like destination clubs are in Europe. That's just the fact of it right now, Tom.
I mean, sure.
But Augsburg's not a destination club either, right? There's 5 clubs in Europe that are destination clubs. Not 5 leagues, 5 clubs. That's all people care about. And I think one thing is, if you are, as MLS, if you have teams like Palmeiras who are consistently putting in for these players, 1, you're driving up your prices, and 2, you're guaranteeing your money. Toronto FC now, if they loan Soteldo out and then potentially sell him, they blew that signing. And they could end up plus on money out of that. Right? So isn't it just better to be in that conversation with clubs like that and have your players be able to move to Palmeiras and then maybe come back from Palmeiras? Or be able to buy from those teams as well and move on. I think it's a little... I disagree that it's a step back for the league and a step back for the selling.
I didn't say it's a step back. I'm just curious if it could be perceived as that, or if it's the type of thing that the clubs doing the selling should be thinking about. Because nominally, the likes of NYCFC and LAFC and Toronto are going to be competing with Palmeiras for the very best the Americas have to offer over the next half decade. And I'm not saying it's a step back, but it's something that should be thought of.
Yeah, I mean, sure, but in this scenario, it's an MLS club selling Atuesta to Palmeiras. Like they weren't competing for Atuesta. This is just another market and another bidder. And again, why I think that the Palmeiras bid got reported is that helps drive up the price. And like you said, that like if they accepted 12.5 for Taddy, like that's still a good deal. But they know that there's a better value out there. And I don't know what he's thinking personally. I don't know if he's like pretty much set, but like he would have accepted a move to Palmeiras last year if NYCFC accepted that. And again, like that has aged so well for them that they rejected the $5 million offer from Palmeiras, signed Taddy to a new contract. He wins Golden Boot and MLS Cup, and now they're going to make triple what they rejected last year.
I think you also, I mean, what I keep thinking about is I think about Palmeiras and the decision that players like Atuesta and of course Tati are making is that destination club means different things for different people. And while everybody in the world probably is growing up in a backyard or on a street or wherever they're playing soccer, manicured, whatever, of playing for Real Madrid or for Milan or for, Bayern, etc. Like, if you're a South American kid who wants to get into your national team, playing for a club team that goes to Copa Lib finals and wins the thing and competes for it and is at the very top of that echelon, and the managers that are going to make this decisions to elevate your career even further are paying attention, that can still make sense for you as well. And if the money's there, like this is a career, like as they say in golf, this ain't a hobby. Like this is a job. I know.
Maybe
I did that for you again. For you, dude. That's only for you. That's just kissy face to you on that one.
But the other thing I'd say is we don't complain when players get sold to Liga MX because it has opened up the window for Liga MX players to come back into MLS. Right? Like we waited for 15, 20 years for good Liga MX players to come to MLS. Now that's happened. And now it's opened up the transfers both ways, right? Gonzalez Pires, whatever. Brazil's finally opened up to MLS at a higher level over the last, 3 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then just then back in the day, you remember Jefferson, the DP in Kansas City, where it's just like, you're getting the dregs.
Everyone was coming from, I don't know, up north, or they were coming from the second division out of Brazil. So I think that also helps the league in that if Tati goes and plays well, if Atuesta goes and plays well, I think it opens players' eyes up to MLS is a high level. it's a worthwhile move for me when a team approaches João Paulo and when they approach Gregory. And I think that helps the league as well.
By the way, before we let you go here, Tom, David Ornstein at The Athletic UK is saying right now that Fiorentina are looking into Tati if they send Dusan to Arsenal. So, hey, something to watch. Transfer news, you know where to get it, at Tom Bogert.
Who owns Fiorentina? Anyway.
Well, interesting. Now without mustache, but still with all the transfer news, at Tom Bogert on Twitter, Tommy Scoops. Looking forward to having you more this year, Tom. Thanks, man.
Guys.
Oh, big thanks to Tom. I only take my transfer news from somebody who has taped Christmas lights to their wall. So I appreciate you, Tom. Love you. You'll be on a lot this year. We had a really good response to his full show debut right before the break ended. Let's talk managers. Steve Cherundolo is LAFC's second ever manager from Las Vegas Lights, taking the step up to Major League Soccer. Impressions on this one. There were a lot of names thrown around from a lot of different places, and ends up Steve's the guy. My first impression, non-soccer wise, is I don't know that the black bomber jacket and flat bill really fits Steve's aesthetic. I'm not sure they're branding him properly.
I want our listeners to understand that this is who Weeby is. Back when we had the studio, if you walked in with a new shirt, and I'm not even talking a new shirt, like a t-shirt, Weeby's definitely going to say something about it. The first thing he's going to do is look you up and down and comment on what you're wearing.
Doyle, if I were to go to space tomorrow and I wore this pair of Adidas that I bought at the Adidas employee store that Weeby looked at and didn't buy, his first comment would be, "I'm still kicking myself that
I want to tell you. I went to the Adidas outlet in Vacaville over vacation, and I was if I can just find a pair of the Boosts with that leather inlay that you have, I would have bought them in a second, man. It just felt like the wrong Steve Cherundolo didn't necessarily feel like the overwhelmingly first choice for LAFC, right? So if I'm the club, I'm thinking about how I want to brand that. And I want to brand that as Steve Cherundolo, the extremely competent American with massive German influences, and I'm just...
the mayor of Hanover.
Yeah, I just didn't see Steve Cherundolo looking back at me in the release. So let's throw that all away. I still want those shoes. What do you think of Steve Cherundolo as the next manager of LAFC, Doyle? What does this say to you about where the club is going? Is this a good hire?
It says that it's John Thorrington's club. He's calling the shots, right? Because he and Steve Cherundolo go back decades. Full U.S. national team, youth national team stuff. And obviously I think it was John Thorrington's call to hire Steve Cherundolo for Las Vegas last year, or certainly maybe not his call, but he certainly had input. And Steve Cherundolo's career, his resume as a player is unquestionable. His resume as a coach to take over LAFC is thin. He was with Hanover for I think 4 or 5 years in various assistant roles, mostly at the youth ranks. He never stuck in one of them for more than a year, and then last year he managed Las Vegas to a 6-23-3 record, and it wasn't a mistake. Their underlying numbers were pretty ghastly, and so look, it sometimes it's who you know. And Steve Cherundolo was an amazing player, one of the best defenders the U.S. has ever had. But this is if I were to compare it to a recent MLS hire, it would be like when Mike Burns hired Brad Friedel. And my hope for LAFC is that this turns out better than that one does.
So let me just push back a little, because he does have coaching experience. He had it at those youth ranks. He also was with the German national team setup, right? He was a youth national team coach with the German FA as an American, which I think is a pretty astounding thing that we never really talked about that much. Obviously, U15, U16 level, so not that high. Then he went and coached a team, and Vegas was rolled out there sort of for that to happen. It was a bunch of kids who were training in Vegas or training in LA and then driving to Vegas in the middle of a COVID year to play a USL championship season. There was not a ton of support there to win games at that level. But when we talk about players going from playing to coaching, having 6+ years of, work in the youth ranks with multiple different coaches and multiple different clubs in different countries, and the German FA, working as a broadcaster and then coaching a team for a year, it is a step back from Bob Bradley, but I don't think anyone wouldn't be a step back from Bob Bradley.
I get. Are you done? I just want to make sure that I'm not stepping on your point.
No. That's all. It's not a home run,
right?
But I think in terms of going from playing to coaching, he has put in a lot of the steps that you need to be ready.
Let me ask one quick question.
Go ahead, Weeby.
That 6-win number that's getting thrown around, obviously. What's more important than that, or something like Mamadou Fall making a massive step up after starting the season with lights, or a couple other homegrowns making a step up to the first team and starting to get minutes? Like, what was he hired to do? I think that's the question you have to ask yourself for Las Vegas Lights. Every soccer coach at a professional level and team wants to win games, but at a different degree than others. And I certainly think that LAFC's view of Lights was more developmental than it was like, yo, let's win the freaking championship.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think LAFC will be happy this year if they have another 45-point season, but like a couple of young players make big steps?
No. No, I don't. But also, Carlos Vela was not healthy last year.
For sure. And I'm not saying that this is a doomed move. Certainly coaches have been hired with thinner resumes than Steve Cherundolo has. But when it was clear that Bob was leaving, we were all joking that Tata was going to be the next coach. Like that. I think that is the type of profile that we all expected. And Cherundolo's resume is not that at this point. Maybe it'll get to that point. I hope it does. It would be awesome if he ended up being as good a coach as he was a player. But like, it is much more of an unknown than I think a lot of folks expected from this team.
I get that they re-signed Vela, and I think that made sense. And obviously, Arango's been good. I don't see a world in which they're not taking a step back as a team. And whether you're calling it a reset, I don't think they're in a rebuild exactly. But like the Bob Bradley, we're going to win a championship in these first 3 years team is gone. You lose out to Esta. If Segura comes back this year, there's a very real possibility that they are a changed defensive team no matter what you do, and that could be a strength for them. But I don't know how they're going to communicate this to their fan base, and I don't know what the signings will look like maybe coming now, and I could be completely wrong, right? They could bring in, I don't know, Memphis Depay tomorrow, and they could get Coutinho on loan instead of Aston Villa. Whatever happens, it just doesn't feel like they're going to be at that level, and so, but they haven't said that outwardly. But it's hard to imagine that they're going to be at the team they were 2 years ago.
Look, by the way, Coutinho just signed with Aston Villa. It was official. They just tweeted it. So you were late on that one. I think, look, Steve Cherundolo is inheriting a difficult, or at the very least, complicated situation, right? Like, what Bob Bradley was, what he represents, not just to LAFC, but to American soccer, what they accomplished in their first couple years, the highs of 2019 when we were all saying, and rightfully so, this is the most aesthetically pleasing / successful soccer team of all time in Major League Soccer. To have the culture that's been created that he's now inheriting, that he's sort of a steward over, that he's a figurehead of between, what happens at the bank and in the 32-52 and in that sort of cauldron of LA. I mean, just being the guy that follows up Bob, that's not easy. And it's not going to be easy. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that if I was an LAFC fan that I wouldn't expect would be for this to just be like status quo, back to 2019, everything's the same. Like, this is going to have to change. It's going to have to change because the players are different for all the reasons you mentioned, whether it be Atuesta or Mark-Anthony Kaye or Walker Zimmerman, who was a huge part of that 19 team, or just whatever goalkeeper is going to be between the pipes. Like, he is going to have to put his fingerprints on this. And we're going to learn a lot about Steve Cherundolo, the manager, what sort of decisions he makes, whether he can bring some of these young players up to a different level than they have been at. Like, I'm looking at the whether it be Rodriguez on the wing, Janela in the midfield. Can you get more from Cifuentes? Like, can Kim take another step up? Is Mamadou Fall going to be this like incredible sell him to Europe for tens of millions of dollar players that he seems he could be? Murillo, Segura, like, this is not 2019 anymore. It's not.
But we'd be still making lists, so it's not everything changes.
Well, you know what? You know why I had that list off the top of the show? Just to get me in a rhythm. Just to get me right back to it.
Just for the goalkeeper.
Just to check it off early. But like, it's not going to be the same, and you can't expect it to be the same. And I think all the question marks you posed are fair, Doyle. Like that's what Steve Cherundolo has to address now. Like this is what the opportunity is about. It's not about coming in and being like, oh, everybody's behind me. It's gonna be perfect.
So Doyle,
it's about proving yourself.
Can I ask this though? In terms of first-time coaches that we're going to see, we're going to talk about Paulo Nagamura in a second. Houston Dynamo announcing him. This is his first head coaching job in MLS. Ezra Hendrickson as well. Do you feel different about the different resumes that those guys have?
Nagamura, it was not super successful at the USL level. Pat Noonan is a longtime assistant who has never been a head coach. Ezra Hendrickson has been an assistant for a dozen years. Got his, was finally getting his shot. I don't feel too differently about any of those guys. The thing that is different here is one, LAFC is just a bigger club than any of those other three clubs. And like, if you're a fan of Chicago or Cincy or Houston and you're mad at that, then hope that, you have to take that medicine. It's just a fact at this point. And two, like every one of those guys.
Let us tell you, LAFC is the sun and you are Pluto.
Every one of those coaches that I mentioned, they've at least been in one role for like multiple years. And Cherundolo really hasn't done that. Like he's bounced from one to another since retirement. And, I'm a little concerned about that. But so it's all in the same ballpark. But there's like the situation with LAFC is just, it's different than Chicago, Cincy, and Houston, who are like they've been the dregs of the league for a few years in a row now, and they're trying to build back up. Whereas LAFC, like, it's not 2019 anymore, but it's also like Carlos Vela, Arango was great last year. Like, this is a team that expects to compete in 2022, and that's a higher bar than what we see in those other spots.
I think they should compete.
Yeah, me too.
I think they should. That's assuming Carlos Vela can give more, but even still, they should be a playoff team, and it's going to be Steve Cherundolo's job to deliver them there. All right, Paulo Nagamura, Houston Dynamo manager. Here is the quote from Paulo. I'm honored to be the new head coach of this club. I'm very excited to help rescue the identity of the Dynamo, something we got away from in recent years. Thrown in the we there. He wasn't around for those recent years, but I think we could all see that they got away from. Yeah, go ahead.
Never existed. Don't you have to create?
Hey, if Kalen was here, he would tell you that's not fair or true. All right, okay, it's just been a while. Excitement level here. What message does this send about what Pat Onstad and new owner Ted Siegel are going to try to build here in Houston?
I think it just means that it's not for 2021 or 2022. God, wow. I think it shows you that this is going to be a longer build, and I think that's fair. We weren't totally sure what would the spend look like this year. How quickly would Pat Onstad try and change the roster? And I think bringing in a guy, as we've talked about, that has no experience coaching in MLS before and a couple years with KC2, but then also working under Peter Vermees. I think the idea is, can we create a long but sustainable build? And when you look at what KC did, you've had some big signings, you've had some big moves, but it was the spine and the backbone that allowed them to be competitive year after year. And I think Houston's in a situation where they're looking to build something like that. And so Paulo Nagamura is a name that's been interviewed. We know he interviewed for Chicago. He's interviewed for a couple of jobs over the last few years. He's a guy who's been sort of around this level. There's that inherent risk with a first-year coach. But I think if the idea is we're going to build something together, we have a similar vision, but it's not going to be MLS Cup contender over the next probably 3 years would be my guess.
This feels to me like they're trying to bottle that. Agreed. You don't hear anything bad about Paulo from anybody around the league when you talk to folks, whether it be former teammates, players who worked with him, coaches, etc. He just sort of like universally acknowledged and respected. But it feels to me like they want to start with that culture side of like we've lost it. Let's get it back. And then let's sort of be what Kansas City has been now, not before, where they were like, hey, are you going to spend? Like, they have the money to spend, but it sure seems like Pat wants to get that foundation in place before he starts going and dropping the tin on, on Polito or whoever it might be. So, I think this is it's a good logical signing, but it is not necessarily one that's going to get you out of your seat. We'll see what happens with Paulo.
The other rumor was Jaime Lozano, right? From Mexico, which would have been a unique signing, would have changed things. And I think when you talk about those big signings and you talk about Polito specifically, creating that bridge to Mexico. And so I think that probably would have had a ripple that this doesn't, but it does show you where the mindset is for Pat Onstad.
By the way, Tigres was a 2010 stop for Paulo Nagamura. So he's got some connections there. Played for Chivas USA, and connections there as well. How about Bradley Carnell, Doyle? They want to play transitional soccer, St. Louis do. They hire the former Red Bull assistant and interim coach. He's got a Ralph Ragnick connect. And Fun and Steel, the sporting director, says, we want to stay away from older big-name PR-type moves. Feels to me like they're going Red Bull. They're going that's the path they're taking. Am I wrong?
It seems like it. Carnell obviously has that lineage. That said, I thought when he was the interim coach in the back half of 2020, they still had that Red Bull ethos, right? They were, run fast, try hard, get stuck in, but they also played a little bit more. Like it was almost like he was able to pull off what Chris Armas had talked about, wanting to have that plan B. I thought Carnell's team, they were able to use the ball a little bit. So I'm not sure it's the pure, distilled, uncut Red Bull that we're getting from Gerhard Struber right now and that we got from Jesse Marsch back in the day. It might look a little bit more like what Armas wanted, and to on a macro level, like when Nagelsmann was coaching RB Leipzig, obviously they were still Red Bull, but they were also like, we're going to use the ball. If the opportunity is there to use the ball and take you apart, we're going to do that. So I think Carnell is probably more in that camp. And like the MLS comparison would be like what DC United looked like last year under Hernan Losada, or what Philadelphia have looked like under Jim Curtin. Like still very direct, still very much about winning your challenges, but a little bit more about using the ball as well.
I think most people would tell you this is a home run for St. Louis, in that this is a guy who's been interviewed in Europe over the last 3 years to be a head coach. And when that Ralph Ragnick connection was a guy that Ralph valued heavily, and we heard the rumors about him coming to Man U, that wasn't a mistake, right? This is a guy who has a ton of respect, but also knows MLS. Because that's the dangerous thing. And a lot of expansion teams have sort of steered away from that, oddly. And so I think for St. Louis, you're looking at, one, you've got your coach in place a year out. So you can really start to build towards that first MLS roster. You've got a GM and a coach who have similar backgrounds, coming from a German footballing style, and so have that connection. You have a guy in Carnell who's been all around the world, but understands what it takes to win here. So I think anyone would have told you if you could have this in place on January 5th, going into that year, that with a guy like this who a lot of people have sought after, would be pretty impressive.
How about this? Let's go to RSL. To Utah we go. New ownership. We've talked about this every time we mention the club. Stand up on your feet. We're here for RSL. If you believe everything under the sun. David Blitzer has put together an ownership group with Ryan Smith, who of course bought the Jazz, had been heavily linked with RSL and perhaps purchasing them as well. He is a part of that group. Dwayne Wade is a part of that group, which now takes our NBA owner connects to Dwayne Wade, Steve Nash, James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Magic Johnson. Who do you put on the bench from that group? This to me is as good as it could have been for El Salt Lake. I really believe that. Blitzer's got this massive base of experience and also base of other clubs around the world that he has ownership stakes in, whether it be Crystal Palace or Augsburg, and then in the NBA and otherwise. Like, he's got a piece of just about everything when it comes to professional sports. Ryan Smith is just absolutely interwoven into the community in Utah. So you have this incredible ambassador for the community who's invested in his own right in the sports market. So you can now connect RSL to the Jazz naturally too, and sort of have an interplay there. You've got deep pockets in Blitzer and a passion for sports and an understanding of the way it works and how to build teams that can succeed in that arena, coming to a team that has been rudderless basically from an ownership standpoint for more than a year. And they say they want to take it to the next level. This is already a team that, whether you want to respect it or not, didn't have to shoot to get to the Western Conference Finals. There is more room for them to grow, obviously, on the spending side.
I went to KC and outplayed them. Don't do the didn't take
I know,
a shot.
I know, but come on, you got to give it to them. You got, you got to look. It's if you're gonna make me the narrative guy, you can't take narratives away from me. Okay. Come on now, like this is as good as it could have gone, I think, for Real Salt Lake, and I'm extremely excited for the fan base, for the players who will be there, and certainly for the staff, who over the course of a while now have done yeoman's work with some difficult circumstances. So I'm just excited.
Bare bones would probably be an understatement. And then look at how competitive they've been. You do not need an ownership group to come in and sign Insigne. You just literally need one structure and a promise. Like maybe your head coach doesn't leave in the middle of the year because they can't guarantee that their job exists the next year or anything.
By the way, Pablo Mastroeni, that's their guy, apparently. That's why he stayed. He had interest from a ton of other places. They said, no, we like Pablo. We like the culture. He needs to stay as part of this process, and you get to keep your head coach.
Yeah, which is
I
great.
Know, it sounds strange.
But you just look at a club that they've built out the academy side, and they're able to bring in legitimate players through both Real Monarchs, because they've done a great job of kind of mining USL and draft picks and all that stuff through that, and then homegrowns. If you have players like that on your roster who give you minutes, that gives you space to spend, and you don't need to have 9 international players who are difference makers for you. And so a lot's already in place at RSL, a lot of good stuff. They just need, even just having the owner is enough. And then you look at, okay, if Rusnak leaves, as it sounds like and stuff like that, they could at least replace those players, if not go a level higher. It's got to be exciting for RSL fans, and hopefully it's different. And as you mentioned, like, shout out to everyone who's just been carrying that club around in their backpack over the last few years.
Yeah, it's good. Now, they could lose Albert Rusnak in free agency, Doyle.
Mm-hmm.
How excited have you been by free agency, and how closely have you been following the Albert Rusnak saga? Will he, won't he? He's going to the Galaxy. Ah, crap, he's not. He's going to the Sounders. Oh, maybe not. He's going to the Middle East. Perhaps. This has been the best free agency that we've had, I think. And, and Rusnak's been right in the middle of it.
And it's no surprise that this is the best free agency, given the parameters got changed last year after the new CBA. I think it's 24 years old and 4 years of service. And obviously Rusnak checks those boxes. I don't rate him super highly. I think he is a middle of the pack, number 10 in this league. I wouldn't be wild about spending a DP slot on him if I was LA or Seattle. If you can get him on a TAM deal, though, I would do that. Absolutely, I would do that.
What if you're RSL, though? I argued when he hit free agency that, and this was pre-ownership, that RSL would be insane to let him walk because they would not be able to go out and spend the fee to get him back, to get the equivalency, and having the opportunity to keep him there, a guy who just played 34 games for you, and I know he was missing in the playoffs for health and safety, and had 10 and 10. Look, I get that. I might not put him in the top 5 to 8 10s in this league either, but it seems strange to me, at least from RSL's perspective, they would not do everything they could to try to keep him.
I think new owners with ambition and deep pockets can find a better number 10 on the international transfer market than Albert Rusnak to spend a DP slot on. Now, if they say, you know what, our plan is to use him as this sort of playmaking inverted winger, which is how Pablo used him a lot last year, and spend our DP slots elsewhere. Like, okay, then keep him, and he could be that guy. But I don't think this is like oh my God, everything is falling apart type of loss for RSL, provided the new ownership is up to speed and ready to to play at the high stakes table on the international transfer market. I think it would be a better sort of force magnifier move ahead of CCL for the Sounders than it would be a bad loss for RSL if they're not able to keep it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Sounders or LA, Dave? Which would you rather see Albert Rusnak at?
I would say Seattle, and I disagree that I think it's a mistake of a signing. I think for Seattle right now, you're in a holding pattern of what is Nico Lodeiro. But you were the second best team in the Western Conference without him last year. You have the same team coming back, minus Shane O'Neill, and you add Albert Rusnak to that, no matter what you're getting from Nico Lodeiro. And I think when you look at a team that, yeah, he's not a top number 10, but you have a top number 9, and you have Jordan Morris, and you have Christian Roldan, and you have an MVP finalist in João Paulo, and maybe you have Alex Roldan again as a difference maker on the wing. He doesn't need to be any of those things, but he's a safer bet than getting a player to come in from outside this league and be good for you this year. And I think when you're in that in-between for Seattle, it's safe. It's safe, and it makes sense to make this move. A guy who understands this league, who put up double digits on a team that didn't spend last year and didn't have a head coach half the year, and bring him in and say, we don't need you to carry us. We don't need you to be the best player on the team. And we know you have positional flexibility depending on how Schmetzer ends up playing based on who's on the roster when you get there. So I think it makes sense for Seattle this year. Yeah, I don't want this to be the type of DPs they're always signing, but you don't have to spend a transfer fee, and you don't really have a ton of risk involved.
I would think it would also be sort of that DP/TAM deal or just a straight TAM deal. TBD, here's a quick question. Just give me a one-word answer. Colin, if you get either Sebastian Blanco, who's maybe not coming back to Portland per reports, or Rusnak for 3-year max TAM, which would you take? Talking about a difference in probably 4 years of age between the two, Rusnak being the younger.
I mean, it just depends on where the team is, right? Yeah. Like if you have a team that is one step away and like your window for title contention is open this year, I take Blanco.
If you're the Sounders,
and eat the 2 years.
The Sounders.
Yeah, and eat the 2 years because like he's just a better player. Now, if you're in a different situation, Rusnak, but also like again, Rusnak would be a really great TAM signing for Seattle. Absolutely, it just of those two, Blanco would be better.
All right, I'm going to start running through deals. You can jump in if you have a quick thought. Maxi Morales back, 1+1 TAM deal. Speaking of getting a difference maker on TAM, to return to NYCFC. That's 1 year guaranteed, then one with the club option. That's a great signing, just straight up. Yep. Sean Davis signs with Nashville SC, follows Dax McCarty. And Alistair Johnson, we didn't talk about this because it hadn't been done, I think. $1 million allocation to Montreal. Any thoughts on either of those, Sean Davis in Nashville or Alistair Johnson? I mean, the Johnson one I'll hit. That one makes complete sense for all parties. I'm sure he wanted more money. Nashville, I'm sure, was saying, okay, well, do we pay you more money, or do we take the million in GAM for a draft pick, who we've got a ton out of? They eventually decided to take that $1 million. They've got a lot of allocation money floating around here. We'll see what they do with it, so I get it from their point of view. How about the Sean Davis one? I think, that was a... Yeah, he was one of the most sought-after guys.
I think we talked about going into the offseason for Nashville. Godoy's been great. Dax has been great. Who's next? And so they decided to spend big this year on who will be next, and then you can get minutes out of him in that. You can sort of limit those two guys if you need to. It makes a ton of sense. From Red Bull's point of view, I don't understand letting him go. And I like Sean Davis, a great person, and I think he's been a very good player in this league. He's not elite at his position, but who else is on the Red Bull roster? Like, what else are you doing? And that, I think, for fans of Red Bulls, there's a huge question mark of what was the thought process in letting him go.
What comes next for Red Bulls, we'll see. Omar Gonzalez signs with the Revs. Ozzy Alonso signs with Atlanta United. Goalkeepers moving. Steve Clark to Houston. Spencer Ritchie to Chicago. Alec Kahn to Cincy. Like a good one.
Alec Kahn Austin to Cincy, signed. Is that the best move in Cincy history? 7 minutes.
Yes.
I mean, it might be Ray. It might be Ray Gaddis getting pulled out of retirement, baby. Let's go. Preacher Ray is back. Not Letuck. The Tuck has returned. He had the bug, man. He couldn't stay away. Love it. Yeah. Love it. Maxi Arudi and Ethan Finley to Austin FC. Austin FC also signing Alex Ring to a DP. A lot of hand-wringing about that one, but that's what they had to do given they have the U22 spots filled up. They had to have a third DP that's not, quote-unquote, the top-end DP salary-wise. You have to be able to buy that player down to fill the 3 spots. So if it wasn't going to be Pochettino, which it looks like it won't be, he's going to go to River Plate or wherever, it was going to be Alex Ring. That made sense.
Maxi's scoring 12, 13 goals this year.
Maxi's taking first how many shots? How many shots to score that many? How many shots?
In a new city, so he always does well. And also, I think that team's actually set up pretty well for him. Maxi's having a year, guys.
All right.
Heard it here first.
Driussi, fill in the coffer for him. A little bit of Cecilio. Okay, I don't know if I buy it, but I like to hear it. Sporting Kansas City signs Uri Rosell. Back to the well, baby, and Ben Sweat. Robert Barrich in re-entry is interesting for them.
Sounds
no
like
deal
it's
yet with
sounds
him,
like it's
but,
not going to happen with that one, which is a shame.
Not going to happen.
He would be so good. He would be so good for that Kansas City team.
FC Cincinnati in free agency. Ray Gaddis, as we said, out of retirement, and Dom Baji as well. So Dom going over to score some goals for them. Sam Stejko also reported way back now that Pat Noonan's inaugural staff has been filled out. Dom Kinnear, Kenny Arena, our assistants, academy coach. Ricardo Paez is going to be an assistant development coach, and then Paul Rogers, formerly with Houston, comes over as the director of goalkeeping. Tyrone Marshall, who is the interim, goes down. He will be the MLS Next Pro head coach for FC Cincinnati. Charlotte FC have the first overall pick in the SuperDraft. Again, that is on Tuesday. Coverage starting at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, MLSsoccer.com, the MLS app, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Then the draft starts at 3 p.m. Eastern. Make sure to tune in for that one. Where do they stand for you right now, Doyle? Just a quick hey, what's up with Charlotte ahead of this draft?
They've filled out a lot of their midfield and backline. They have what looks to me like 3 backups along their front line. I assume it's going to be a 4-3-3. And the front line just does not have clear starters right now. They have 3 DP slots open. They have, I think, 4 international roster slots open, and they've already they've traded $750,000 to acquire 3 international roster slots. So they clearly have plans. It looks like they've been building with a plan. This is not this is not FC Cincinnati. This is not just like a thrown together. What are they doing? It is a little different. They're going very hard on imports, which is obviously the case when you trade for that many international roster slots. And I'm not sure that that's going to work out because we know it usually takes a year to adjust to a new league in a new country.
David Goss theorem,
right? But at least I don't a mediocre plan executed faithfully is better than a really good plan executed poorly. So that is kind of
no plan not executed.
Right, right. And that is kind of where I'm at on Charlotte, though it can change. Maybe all these guys that they're signing are amazing, and if that's the case, then they'll be really good. But we know that despite what Atlanta and LAFC did, it's more often than not expansion teams struggle in year one.
And still the big signings to come, so wait and see on that. Some rapid fire here, and then we'll just roll through the mailbag as fast as we humanly possible here, which is not fast for us. DC open to trade offers for Ola Kamara. What do you think about that, Dave?
I think he makes sense for a lot of teams. He doesn't really fit DC's model, and he's probably at his peak of value you can get because he's coming off a golden boot push, no matter how many of the goals were penalties. So I think it makes a ton of sense. Losada doesn't want him around, probably. And he could score goals for other teams. So I wouldn't be surprised if he lands somewhere.
Colorado?
I was thinking Minnesota, and then you sort of take pressure off Hunu. That was one that popped in my head. Who'd you say, Doyle?
Colorado. That one feels like a possible Colorado. You're talking about a window and maybe distressed assets FC, though he's not particularly distressed. More. Are you trying
to get Sebastian Blanco and Ola Kamara to Colorado this offseason, maybe? Is that
hell yes. Oh my God. Start that rumor right now.
With Cole Bassett and
Burgundy Wave, pick it up. Anonymous sources say both players in. Minnesota United with the U22 signing from South Africa, been with the national team here. We'll see how that works out for them. San Jose apparently didn't script the paperwork on Lachofis. He's going to be back on loan. Jan Gregus, as Doyle said early in 2021, according to San Jose, a very underrated player in MLS. So he's on a TAM deal for them. They had picked him up in re-entry. The Rapids.
Are we allowed to say stuff?
Go ahead.
He is a gorgeous passer of the ball. He does not move very much. He seems like the anti-Almeida player. And like Doyle, I love Younger. I'd have him on my soccer team. I don't think Almeida would, so this is a weird moment and move, but c'est la vie.
On brand, baby. Rapids trade for Abubakar Keita. It's $300K in GAM, rising to $450 depending on performance from the Crew, young center back. They also signed a Brazilian 20-year-old, Max Alves, from Flamengo for about $1 million. They got Brian Acosta in re-entry, though we haven't heard him being signed. This goes to what we were talking about with Tom, which is basically, is Austin Trusty and his future sort of going to be elsewhere? Is Cole Bassett's future going to be elsewhere? Are these direct replacements for those guys? We shall see. According to Tom, it sounds like it's very possible that Bassett could be on the move in this window. Crew signed a Ghanaian winger, Yaya Boa. He's a right to dream guy. Kind of a mid-level international signing for them. Union pick up Julian Carranza on loan. This is an interesting one, Doyle. And we have all that jazz saying, what's the over-under on goals for Julian Carranza in Philly?
I don't know. I'll put it at 7.5. Right?
I'll go over.
Yeah, feels like Union strikers, like 8 to 9 is about the right number for Union strikers. And if you get them all on that number, then you got a 27 goal.
Just want you to everybody to know that Anders says under easy. So producing Anders
under
chiming
easy.
in.
Do you like this? Do you like this signing from the Union?
I do.
We've talked about you and how might the emergency vehicles in the background?
Yeah, right. So Carranza's 21 years old. He has experience with the Argentinian national team. He's played at the top division in Argentina. He's obviously played a little bit top flight for Miami. He hasn't been great here, but at one point he was a pretty highly regarded prospect. Miami probably paid a little too much for him up front, like maybe not a $6 million prospect, maybe like a $3 or $4 million prospect, but Philly doesn't go out and buy players like that. They don't. Like, they're not going to go out and spend that kind of money on a prospect. So they get to look at him essentially for free. And if it works out, then there's apparently a mechanism within the loan where Philadelphia can make it permanent. That seems like really smart business from that front office, who has had to figure out different ways to build a contender. And given what they've become over the last 4 years, I give them the benefit of the doubt.
And if you bring him in and he hits and then you buy him, he could be something you make money off of when you sell later on, because you assume the number you're bringing him over for is much different than what Inter Miami brought him in for. So Doyle is completely right. This is a no-lose situation for them. If he's bad, then he's bad. And then you have Shabilko, Corey Burke, and Sergio Santos. You're kind of where you were last year in an Eastern Conference Finals. And so it makes a ton of sense for a club that's still sort of working within the margins. But similar to the Dallas thing, how many players do you sell before you start to say, well, okay, why are we still a team that is, just trying to work the cap and work between the margins to be competitive when you're Eastern Conference Finals and you've now sold
CCL
multiple players for
semifinalists.
millions of dollars?
Yeah.
I don't know. The one thing that Tom did not say, but he did report, is that Paxton Aronson is already getting some interest from the RB teams over in Europe as well. So that's just a note on the Union. Inter Miami fire sale is ongoing. They're giving it away. Just show up, fill a bag for $5. It's like a garage sale. No, I'm just kidding. Chris Henderson he's remaking a roster that needed to be remade and trying to lay a new foundation in the face of allocation money that's been taken away because of everything that happened with the DP situation. So Inter Miami has traded for Bryce Duke, Mo Adams, and Ariel Lassiter. They signed Jay Mota out of Brazil. Out. Rodolfo Pizarro on loan to Monterrey. Blas Matuidi not coming back. Julian Carranza loan to the Union. Nico Figal not coming back. Lewis Morgan traded to Red Bulls, which basically makes up their allocation money doc for 2022. Pipa retired. LGP rumored to be the next one out. Kelvin Leerdam out. Vitiyoa signed on a lower number deal, I believe, but coming back. The only, in their top 10 top played players from last year, I think it's Higuain,
Gregory,
the younger, and Gregory, and that's it.
Yeah.
Everybody else has got a big red line through him. He's doing the difficult work right now.
They just want to rebuild the offensive line, so they're just going to go heavy in the second round of the draft. I think that's the plan in Inter Miami, and it makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah. Look, this is a. Anybody disagree with tear down?
No,
I think
it's a
they're just trying
teardown.
to get under the cap.
It's interesting. It's so interesting, man. To watch what they're and LGP and Nico Figal, they're going to River Plate and Boca Juniors, respectively. That's even within the league. like Christian McCoon, it looks like he's headed to Charlotte. Kelvin Leardam, he's gone. He's got like it's wild.
He's going to the Galaxy. Yeah.
How like it's wild what they have to do. What they have to do now is make sure they don't biff it on their draft pick, because they had 2 top 3 picks in 2020. Robbie Robinson's been okay. They barely played Dylan Nealis before getting rid of him. And then 2021, they drafted Josh Penn 9th overall. They cut him this offseason. Like, if you're rebuilding on a budget, you got to get those draft picks right. You got to make sure you have the ability to, develop and get good minutes out of players who are on low cap hit numbers.
We got a lot in the mailbag. We're not going to get to it. We got to record the SuperDraft preview, by the way, that comes out on Monday. The only thing I'll throw in here, who are you guys excited for on the U.S. men's national team, MLS, like, get ready for Octagon fitness roster that's going to gather here. It's basically 19 guys from MLS. That's where the call-ups will be from the league. Is there one player whose name jumps out to you? Like,
DeJuan Jones.
Who excites you in this group? Or who do you, any thoughts?
DeJuan Jones. I think players should be rewarded for quality play in MLS, that alone. He's left or right back, if depending on how long Brandon Bai stays in New England, but he can be a difference maker in the attack, and he's, I think he's physical enough to play at the international level, so I'm excited to see what DeJuan Jones does.
DeJuan Jones, a super draft pick, by the way. I'm going to throw out Aaron Long. We've had some questions about who partners Miles Robinson. Aaron Long was like the Rock. He was going to be the guy until he got hurt, so it's exciting to see Aaron Long back with this group and to see what maybe he could provide in the year 2022 for the U.S. men's national team, as well as Red Bulls. A ton of other mail in here. We will try to get to that next Thursday. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Good to be back, everybody. Again, MLS SuperDraft, sort of the kickoff for the year, and then training camps after that. The SuperDraft is on Tuesday. Coverage, MLSsoccer.com, MLS app, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. It starts at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Going to tell you some stories, introduce you to players, catch up on what's going on around the league, and then the draft will start at 3 p.m. Eastern. The 2022 MLS SuperDraft presented by Adidas. All right, that's it for us. 401-206-0MLS, extratime@MLSsoccer.com. If you have more mail, hit us up. We will try to hit it in the coming week, and then it's going to be off and running to February 26th. And actually, I take that back to February 15th because that's CCL. 2020 starts now, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. Adios.
2020?
Yeah, 2020.
Oh, my God. 2022. Enjoy your weekend. Adios. So you made it through and even enjoyed more than an hour of MLS talk with Extra Time driven by Continental Tire. That means that you should go subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to them, and you should also check out more Extra Time on the MLS YouTube channel. If I can point right there, yeah, click right there, and subscribe to the MLS channel right here. Have a great day, folks.